Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Heartland Mamas. I'm Murray Briel.
And I'm Heidi Henry, coming to you from two socially distant studios at the edge of the Great Red Divide. Every Tuesday and Thursday at 3 p.m., we bring you the news and views of progressivism from the middle of the Heartland. I'd like to invite you to see all of our previous episodes at heartlandmamas.com, on all podcast streaming platforms, YouTube, and proudly part of the Demcast USA network. So today, Marie and I are going to talk to you some more about the test of our democracy. We're testing an old document called the U.S. Constitution, and we're seeing that the insurrectionists really put our Constitution to the test. So, Marie, let's talk about some of the things that we've discovered since our last rant on Tuesday, shall we?
Well, on Tuesday, we hit on several of the more obvious things, but as time goes by, we're starting to see more layers of insidiousness. We focused a little
Yes,
bit on Bobert, the representative from Colorado, the gun-toting
Colorado.
lady. And
The
she
gun-toting high
was
school dropout.
right, right. So we talked about her, but since Tuesday, we have learned that she did not graduate from high school and that she has a few arrests on her record for things minor incidents. It really does seem, though, like if you're going to represent someone, you should have a stricter uh, background check than Starbucks does. We talked about this before. I'm a soccer coach for kids and for a middle school, and I have to have an FBI background check, fingerprinted,
Yeah,
Interpol. These people had to have nothing, like
nothing,
absolutely nothing. Remember
nothing.
that. I said this when Donald Trump was elected. I said we definitely need to put into place some sort of bipartisan criteria for running for president. I'm sorry. It doesn't have
Oh,
to
yeah,
even be a
we had told
college degree.
Bobert.
It just has to be, you know, and we expect our system depends on people doing the right thing, right? Our system depends on having representatives, and I totally lost my train of thought. But I'm so sorry. I was
Well,
right
I think
there.
I think the point that I'd like to make about that is I think that there's plenty of very intelligent people that never graduated from high school, plenty
Yo,
of them
that's you're right, Heidi. And
that have, and
I'm
I
not
think
even
there are people
saying you
that have
have to have a
been,
high school degree, but I'm saying you should have to have a background check, and that criminal uh chronic criminal behavior, I don't know. I'm sorry. I am
I
sorry. No. No, 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 no. Because yes, you might miss out on one person who was awesome and did something bad, but majority of what we get are these Bobert chicks, these Q freaks, those that have no understanding of what it means to have loyalty to the Constitution or the rule of law. And that is what is concerning.
yeah,
You're right. We can't do a personality test. We can't do an IQ test, but there has to be some criteria by which you can govern.
well, the people of Colorado chose her to go to Congress of her district, and personally, I think if you've done a crime and you've been arrested and you've made restitution, whatever that is, I don't think that that precludes you from, certainly not a felony, but if it's a misdemeanor or whatever, I don't think that precludes you because people grow and change over the course of their lifetime. And I know that, my financial records were made very public when I was running for office because of the debt I accrued when my son was sick for quite a long period of time. And I was made to feel like a criminal for taking care of my child. So even though it wasn't a criminal offense, it was how it was portrayed
Now,
by
see,
my part
Heidi,
to the public.
but you're exactly right. You just nailed it. The onus is on a challenger or an opponent
Yes.
to bring the negative things to light, to highlight them, to emphasize
That
them.
was me.
And
That
that's
was
what
my own
happened.
party,
But
not my
what
opponent.
happens when you have an opponent that doesn't have the money to make known what their
Yes.
opponent has done, and doesn't have the clout to make sure that it gets in the right ears to get that message out. So that's kind of what I'm saying, is that, you know,
Yeah.
the vetting process. There is no vetting
The
process.
vetting,
The only
the
vetting
vetting
process
process.
is your opponent and whether they have the money
Right.
to do the dirt and the money to spread that dirt around. That's all there
Right.
is. And to me, if I have to have a background check and I have to have basic criteria, a drug test, etc., to work at
Me too.
Starbucks
I work
or
with kids
wherever,
all the
I
time.
think that those people leading the nation, making decisions for us, should have to have some baseline competency, some
So Maureen,
objective competency. Can they
I,
read? Did they read the Constitution?
I had a doctor's appointment today and had a talk with somebody in the office that is familiar with our podcast that asked me how, because it was in the area where we know in the county I live in, where we have QAnon on the police force. And she said, how do we get around it? I said, I really think that as part of the loyalty oath, we ought to preclude people who have ties to conspiracy theories and to the alt-right. I said, we ask them for so many other things. I think this is a small thing, a small ask that we can know that our police force is dedicated to upholding the law of the land, not the law of the queue. And I don't think that interferes with First Amendment rights at all, because we know that alt-right is terrorists. We know that the Q conspiracy is a bunch of falsehoods. There's no the only centralized theme is anarchy. Well, you don't want an anarchist as a police officer. That makes no sense. Those are contradicting terms, right? And
So, Heidi, you
contradicting
just mentioned
ideology.
something. You just mentioned that they are terrorists. And I guess that's where the first
Yeah.
line starts, is identifying them as terrorists. The FBI, acting FBI director, had a very interesting story, and then he changed his story about what happened with the Capitol
Yeah.
insurrection, and that he didn't have any information, and then he did a written product as opposed to an announcement about what was going on. But his excuse was that they felt like they couldn't act on that information because most of it was gleaned from social media, and that would be an infringement on First Amendment rights. And take that a step farther, because if it were Al Qaeda or ISIS or the IRA, any governmentally identified terrorist group, it would not have
Exactly.
been First Amendment. But
Nope.
white supremacy and white terror nationalist terror groups, have been removed from that list, thanks
By
Trump.
Donald Trump. By
And
Trump.
and so the FBI, while seeing all this chatter, really kind of technically couldn't do anything because they weren't identified as terrorists.
You know
That
what,
tells
Marie?
you
That's
that
like
it's
that's
just
like
jacked.
saying I see a car rolling down the alley and nobody is driving, but it's not my car, so I'm just going to let it go and plow into that crowd of school children.
But no one would care
I,
unless
I
it was
find
their
that to be
kid in that crowd.
yes. So I look at that and I think, you and I talked about this thing with the FBI. That was them kind of going, it's not our fault. It's not our fault. It's the Constitution's fault. Exactly. That's exactly why we had an insurrection at the state capitol or at the U.S. Capitol, because, First Amendments, those are white guys. It can't possibly go wrong. And, Marie, when we talk about conspiracy theories, and we talked a little bit about this, about my theory on the last show. How do we get Republicans, ordinary Republicans that are conserving God knows what, because we never know what exactly they're conserving, not
They're
air, not
conserving their
land,
way of
not
life.
money.
They are conserving
Well,
their way
yeah,
of life, Heidi.
it's
They're
it's
conserving white
it's code talk
supremacy.
for yes, it's code talk for I'm conserving my white power.
Yeah.
But how do you get them to make the jump to fascism? And I told you my philosophy, because instead of the Republican flag or the American flag, they're all flying Trump flags. So they're not honoring the party, they're not honoring the country, they're not honoring the flag. They're honoring one man. So today, when I was at the doctor's office, I wrote down, the right-wing conspiracy theories is a way of mass radicalization of the Republican Party. Right? Mass
Yeah.
radicalization, because you have massive 22 million plus that are literally brainwashed to believe
22
that what's happened at the
million
state capitol is really
Republican
it.
voters, and I believe it's closer to 30 million Republican voters,
Yeah.
are the party of Trump. They voted for Trump based on, or they voted Republican based on Trump. Do not share the same
They are Trump.
principles of
They
what
are
the Republican Party once did.
Trumpicans.
Yeah,
Trumpublicans.
Trumpicans.
They're not Republicans because they're not loyal to their party. You know, and a lot of times you and I have this discussion, why is Heidi loyal to the Democratic Party? Well, that's my party. I'm loyal to that party. Not to a fault, because I see their faults and I call them out on it all the time. But these people are loyal to Donald Trump to the exclusion of the U.S. Constitution. That's
Yes, 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 yes,
mass
Heidi.
radicalization. So, and I told you my little drive, because I get real picky about my doctor. So I'm driving clear out to Spring Valley, Illinois from Marseilles, which is about a 45-minute drive. And I'm driving out to see my doctor, and new doctor, poor guy had to deal with me today. Horse trainer that just won't shut down enough to let her body heal, and that's why I have orthopedic surgeons. But I made sure that I made my trail through the Illinois Valley around where I'd seen like massive displays for Donald Trump over the last 4 or 5 years. Massive displays, massive. Of all of them that I used to see all the time, one old building in Marseilles still had their Trump flag up, and I mean, this is like an apartment building that's really falling down that was built in the 1800s. They still had theirs up, like they've got something in common with them. One giant crane in Peru, Illinois, and then a stupid Joe and the Ho sign that was not too far from where I live. But like really, even the guy that I know is the head of the local Tea Party had all of his stuff down today. So weird, because he had a Trump one sign up 6 days ago when I drove by.
Wow. So I think you're
So I'm
right,
thinking,
Heidi.
could
I
could
think
the scales be falling from their eyes? Could they finally be seeing this for what it is?
I think that you're I
You and I will be
think
puzzled why they couldn't see it all along.
Heidi,
Go ahead, I'm
40
sorry.
million Republicans, 40 million Republicans will fall away. They will see for what it is. But we still have to worry about that 30 million crazy insurrection nut jobs
Yeah.
followers that are fostered by these, Marjorie
Taylor Greene,
Taylor
Marjorie
Greene
Taylor Greene, and
and
Lauren Boebert.
Andy Biggs and Louis Gohmert. They're fostered and encouraged by these folks.
Yeah. Well, and then
And as long as they keep that going,
yeah,
we may lose another couple million, but there's still a significant portion of the population out there that's going to have to be, I don't even know.
I think about where do we go from here, because this is a significant amount of people. A lot of the people that were arrested or that are on the watch list or the warrant list for the FBI, about a third of them have connections to either law enforcement or military, active and retired. It's very difficult. I mean, the Veterans Administration has not made any noise, but a lot of the congressmen have said they're going to strip these people, for these insurrectionists that have ties to the military, of all of their GI benefits, which I think is fair. If you're going to attack your country at the highest level, you should lose your benefits. Most of the police officers that have been apprehended so far, even though they were there on their day off, because they broke the law, even breaking and entering is enough to get you fired. And they're letting them go. So I think the most important thing is there has to be swift, sudden, and severe repercussions for what happened. I'm always stunned at the amount of people that just don't understand how serious this was and how close we came, except for the one man that drew fire, the one Capitol policeman that distracted the insurrectionists. and kept the Senate safe and allowed them to evacuate. If not for him, God knows how many people. They may have really legitimately hung Mike Pence, was their plan, was to hang Mike Pence, hang Nancy Pelosi. And then we need to talk about some of the other things that led up to that we're finding out now. Ariana Presley's chief of staff said that all their panic buttons were removed from their office. Now, we don't know, was that a maintenance issue? Is this limited to just her office? Is it just the squad's office? Is it just Democratic offices? Is it all congressional offices? We don't know. So those are things that, like, you hear these reports and you go, that could be something, and it could be nothing. Just like
Heidi,
the
you're
Go ahead, I'm
100%
sorry.
right, and that's just really big. You're spot on, is we don't know. And yes, it has only happened a little over a week and a day ago that we
Right.
did this. But the another major concern is that we don't know. We have not had the FBI coming out and giving a briefing. We have not had the
The
Pentagon
FBI has
come
been,
out. We have not
yeah,
had Homeland Security. None of our intelligence agencies or those groups that are supposed to take care of situations like this that arise have come out. I mean, they're coming out talking about all of the violent insurrection events that are supposed to be happening over the next, 6
right.
days, but they're not giving us a breakdown of what happened. And that is concerning as democracy, right? Like,
Yeah.
okay, legislators politic, presidents are supposed to govern, and the legal branch is supposed to keep us safe, right? Like, essentially.
Well, in those checks and balances, and we saw the checks and balances in real time with the lawsuits that came against the election. Here's a lawsuit on voter fraud, that check, and then a balance return, and another check and a balance return. 64 times we saw checks and balances work exactly how the Constitution meant for it to work, how the designers of our democracy meant for it to work. These checks and balances worked out. But in the end, it wasn't enough for about 30 million people. It wasn't enough, the checks and balance system, which is what we rely on as Americans to keep our democracy
And we've talked about this countless
forthright.
times. It comes down to rule of law, and the rule of law we hear about so very often, but we forget that rule of law is only worth anything if it is honored and
Yes.
enforced. And we saw with the countless lies and the conjecture and the rumors and everything that we've been bombarded with for the last 4 years, it's brought
Mm-hmm.
glaringly apparent that the rule of law is just a construct. It really doesn't mean anything.
It's
And so we have to
subjective.
find a
It's
way.
subjective to the person.
We have to find a way to get rid of those 200 representatives who voted not to impeach the president. We have to reach those 30 million Trumpublicans, and deprogram. There is so much work to do. And
Well,
you mentioned,
we're
go ahead.
seeing we're seeing around the country right now people whose political careers are completely destroyed that are running for office right now that threw all in with Trump, threw all in on this insurrection talk, the Stop the Steal talk. In New Jersey, there's been somebody who's already dropped out of the governor's race over that. Now, we also see other people that I think are going to lose everything. It's their position in the Senate, their position in the House, and possibly go to jail. And Lauren Bobert, I think, is at the top of that. She's somebody who wants to pack a sidearm everywhere. Personally, I
Okay,
could conceal carry. I choose not to. I don't think I need to be alarmed when I'm shopping in Jewel.
can
I'm
we
just
just
saying. It doesn't
say
bother me.
for a minute, you have
Hmm.
representatives, which you are not
Yeah.
supposed to bring a gun into the Capitol. You are not
Right.
supposed to have a loaded gun carrying it around DC.
Right.
These representatives are breaking the law to
They
begin with,
are.
and then they're rejecting metal detectors. What are you bringing IEDs in? What the hell?
Well, so Lauren Bobert, going back to her, the representative from Colorado who runs the Shooter's Grill, where everybody from your waitress to your busboy to your cook and your line and your
Is
dishwasher are all
packing.
packing heat. That's part of their sales point. And you know what? I really don't care. That's Colorado's deal. But it's a different deal when you leave Colorado and you come to Washington, D.C. You know, I don't care that she didn't graduate. I really don't care that she's been arrested a few times. I do care that she aligns herself with the QAnon and conspiracy theories and that she won't follow the letter of the law in the state of which the capital resides. So she won't follow DC law. She won't follow our national parks laws. She won't follow Capitol grounds laws. She won't follow the Capitol Police rules. Her purse set off the alarms, and I can't find the finished report. I know that it set off the alarms, but I don't know if they let her continue on through or if they kept her purse. They wanted to search it, and she said no, and there was a big tussle, but we were getting ready to go on, so I haven't followed up on that. But, Murray, there has to be some lines in the sand that cannot be crossed. And especially since we know that there may or may not have, it looks like there have been some reconnaissance tours where people that were part of the insurrection toured the building January 5th, which with
Which is
COVID,
odd
that there
since
hasn't
those
been a lot
tours
of
have been
tours.
stopped since
Very odd.
March from COVID. And one of them is this
Right.
delightful lady that we've just been talking about, Bobert, is seen actually Instagramming herself giving tours. Which, if you've ever been to the
On the
Capitol, it
Insta.
is
Yeah.
extremely maze like. And why would she be giving tours? And they were not
Well,
family.
they
So
weren't
that there,
family.
there,
And
I
then
think we're gonna see more of that come to light.
her picture was on Instagram with the crowd, and 6 of those people have already been picked up as insurrectionists. 6 of the people in the picture that she posted on her own Instagram were picked up as being part of the insurrection the very next day. She also, Congresswoman Bobert, also live tweeted the location of Nancy Pelosi while they were in lockdown.
Yeah, she
And
did.
I think at some point the FBI is going to pick her up, and she's not going to like what's going to happen because I don't think she's going to be get out of jail
So,
free card because
like,
she's
you
an,
can be a
a
felon and still
soulless
serve in
bitch.
Congress. So,
I
what
don't
can
think
we
she's
do
a
to
felon. I
ban
think she's
them?
gonna.
But she would be a felon if they followed through and found that she was a part of it. So, how do we block? It's a great question. How the hell do
I
we stop
I think
all of these nut
yeah.
jobs from ever running for office again?
Well, and with Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's from the South, I don't know, was she from Georgia or
Georgia.
Georgia?
Georgia.
So with her, she had an opponent, and the QAnon followers harassed the opponent to the point where he dropped out of the race. He didn't even want to deal with it because they don't just follow you around. I was followed around by people when I was running for office. It didn't really bother me because, coming at me, bro. But I wrestle horses for a living. See how far it gets you. But um, there were threats against his family. There's threats against himself. I mean, at some point, you've got to say, "Hey, I can't put my family in danger anymore. I have to pull out of the race," which is exactly what he did. So we have to understand that there has to be a certain level of decorum that has to come back to, in running for political office. And I believe that if there is insurrection against each individual candidate, an insurrection may or harassment at that level, that law enforcement needs to get involved. You're a public official and covered by that for harassment. We have to really take a hard look at that because when they're following people around making death threats, there was a representative just to the east of me when he ran. The last time he had an opponent, a single mom of 3 children, and he would send people to her house to pound on the walls of her house in the middle of the night and wake the household up. And this happened over and over and over again. So she was so freaked out she never wanted to run for office again. And this was her opponent and the local Tea Party that arranged all of this harassment for her at some point. And then the sheriff's department's in the pocket of the representative, so she has no recourse. There's no way she can absolve this issue, right? So this is what I know on a small scale in Illinois, which is a fairly clear thinking area. But then you get into Colorado or in Georgia where things are not quite as cut and dried, where things can be a little more, um, I hate
Wild
to
Wild
say backward
Westish.
or redneck, but
Wild
Well,
Wild
in the
Westish.
Wild Wild West is a myth. It's a Hollywood
Right,
myth made to
right.
sell
Yes, it
movies, right? It
is.
wasn't true. It's like why are there no black cowboys in westerns? At least a third of cowboys were black. Just saying, or Mexican, you know. So, but the thing about the reconnaissance chores, and I think we're going to learn a lot about that this week, is as the information comes out, because Allie Alexander, who organized the Stop the Steal event, who's part of the, what is it, Proud Boys or something, um, a half a million dollars.
He's.
Yeah,
Go
a
ahead.
half a million dollars came in through Bitcoin into 22 wallets for the alt-right just the month before so they could help finance this foreign source. And we know this to be a fact. But what part of that financed these reconnaissance tours, the 60 odd buses that one place alone was able to charter, the chartered private planes that came in to Washington? There's so many things that we need to look at. There are some of these people that went around in limos and in party buses and so on. That's not
Yeah, it
normal.
seems like so much of the MAGA group is portrayed as being rednecks and
Humble,
bubbas. You know,
yeah, everyday
but
people.
those that were the ones invading the Capitol, those that were the ones that were pushing through the glass doors um, and breaking, ignoring Capitol Police and attacking them were not those folks. They were the high end, wealthy folks. And
Doctors,
yep,
lawyers, business owners, and here we see a story
CEOs.
today that yeah, CEOs. We have not my pillow guy. He must have stayed home. But today we get a report that a lot of the money that came into the Patriot Prayer and the Tea Party Patriots, both alt-white groups, came from a company, the owners of a company called Uline, which manufactures, all kinds of like you can buy like everything from little clips to
Uline
cardboard
is
boxes.
they Dick Uline and his delightful wife we've done stories on. Quick
Right
summary are probably two of the most reprehensible human beings in the world,
on the planet.
unless they're on a
I will
par
say,
with the Koch brothers and the Mercers.
yeah.
Yeah.
If I could, I think they're worse than them because they are. Look, they came here from Germany just after World War II. They had some connections to the Third Reich that have been put behind them so that they could go forward. But they donate extensively to the Republican Party and to the alt-right. And those types of things are things that the FBI, who's been hogtied by the Trump administration, those are things that they need to look into because you have to cut off the money source. These things that
Absolutely.
happened that even,
Well, they
I've
can't. Okay,
rented PAs
but
for
we have to
events. Those
stop
are
Heidi right
expensive. You
there
need money.
because they cannot even
Yeah.
begin to follow the money trail until we can declare white supremacist groups, Tea Party
True.
groups as terrorists. The
Right.
government has their hands tied, which tells you how incredibly fucked up our system is. That law
Yeah.
enforcement can't do anything because some folks said no, they're not terrorists. And we all know that's bull. So we've
Yeah. We
got a
all know
lot of
that.
changes that we need to make from the top down. And to me, going into the inauguration, I feel personally, I was saying to Heidi before during our pre-show that the inauguration and what comes after is going to be the real test of our democracy.
Yeah.
It's going to be an anchor for the belief we have in our intelligence community, the belief we have in our military, the belief we have in the systems that are supposed to govern and protect us.
Yeah.
And if it's able to pull off without much damage, if we're able to do it, that'll be a great signal for being able to move forward as a nation. But I'm
Well, and
terrified about
I
that
well,
day.
I think I'm not as terrified as you are because I do believe that the one thing we've really seen through this election cycle is that our Constitution held, our principles held. We need to make sure that we plug all the holes that we can
Okay,
find, and we need to not give anybody a pass. There can't be any
I don't think
softball in this.
anything is set yet. I'm just saying. Like I said,
Okay.
I have been telling you January 21st, baby. January 21st. Let's get through January 20th. This guy has only escalated and gotten more crazy, and his followers have gotten more crazy, and they're all boxed into a corner for fear of losing their power. He's losing his relevance. The most dangerous animal is one that's cornered, and that's where he is now. And if we think he can't do anything else, then we are fooling ourselves. It's not over.
We are. That's why sudden, swift, severe retribution for not just being present in Washington, but being a financial backer, being a sympathizer, being an organizer here out, in the heartland or anywhere you are, anywhere in the world. All of those people have to be held accountable for this insurrection. We cannot drop the ball. And
And
I
elected
know that,
officials.
well, elected officials, I believe that a lot of pressure has to be put on the state of Colorado and the state of Georgia and a few others to recall their senators. Texas, of course, with Ted Cruz, Missouri for Josh
Missouri.
Hawley. They have to, yeah, they
How
have
can
to recall
Missouri have
them.
such
And it's like,
awesomeness like Cory Bush and such assholes like Josh Hawley? I mean, honestly.
well,
How
you
can they
need to
do
read
that?
Dying. You have to read Dying of Whiteness. I'm telling you, the discussions on Missouri are it makes me never want to go there. I don't know that I'll ever go there again. We used to go there to barrel race 3 to 6 times a year, and it's like I read that I'm like, I think I'm staying out of Missouri.
Well, we are staying
Like my daughter's
off.
going off to college.
Yeah, well, well, all of us are staying put right now, anyway, because of COVID. So, look forward to
Yeah.
next week getting a special episode, a special COVID episode, and thanks for tuning in. We really hope you understand the magnitude of what's going on, and it becomes more and more
Yeah.
numbing the farther we go. But if we do the right things and
Yeah.
set the right examples, we will be able to come out of this as a
Better
democracy
than ever.
stronger and smarter. But we have to be willing to do the right things. So fingers crossed it happens.
And there has to be space for the Republican Party to find its identity and rebuild itself outside of the alt right. The alt right has to be.
They're not allowed. They go away. I say go away. All right. Thanks again for joining us and tuning in. Remember, guys, every Tuesday and Thursday, if you cannot possibly wait to hear the latest Heartland Mamas episodes that come out on Tuesdays and Thursdays, you can catch it before it's out by coming into Facebook Live. Join us Tuesdays and Thursdays everywhere you get your favorite podcasts, YouTube, Demcast USA. So, Heartland Mamas,
MAMAS.com. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. We'll see you next Tuesday. Bye bye.
bye bye.